Yeah, chapter 3, evaluating a company's external environment. That's the first step towards, trying to figure out what's the best strategy for the company. Also deciding what kind of mission, vision, and goals that we set forth, and to determine the kind of strategies that might work in our favor to achieve those goals and objectives. So this is the first step. This is the most important step, I believe, because you could get it wrong here, then whatever strategies that you're going to come up with, you're going to still struggle because you have not assessed the external environment for the company. The external environment has a huge bearing of what happens to us as company, as individuals. So I think this is an important chapter. I cannot emphasize how important it is, not just for the exam purpose. I'm talking of companies. This is such an important first step. This is not even the first step. It happens all the time. Even if you're an established company, even if you're doing very well in the past 1 year, you might still come up with a lot of challenges because of the external environment, and therefore you have to pay attention to your external environment and make sure you're taking the right assessment of what's going on around you. So going back here, the learning objectives for today's, yeah, Jessica.
I'm sorry. Is this going to be reflected in the third weekly reflective report?
Exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Got it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the first learning objective for today's class is gain command on the basic concepts and tools that are required to assess, understand your external environment and the competitive conditions that a company has in that particular industry in which it operates. The second one is to diagnose the factors shaping the industry dynamics and also forecast their effects on the future industry profitability. You can talk and talk a lot of things because there's so much going on in the external environment. Companies have to make sure that they understand and assess what's going on and the factors that drive the industry basically. And in a sense, you get a better chance to forecast how your own company is going to do given the scenario, given the conditions, given the driving factors. Then the third learning objective for today's class is, you become good at mapping the market positions of key groups of industry rivals, because you got to understand not just your company, how it operates in the external environment. You got to understand how rivals are operating and what kind of positions do they have in comparison to where you stand as a company. So you need to map them across different parameters. It could be price, it could be performance, it could be quality. You can take anything on the x-axis, you can take anything on the y-axis. Look at where you stand in comparison to rival companies, in comparison to competition. That's the key. And then understanding why in-depth valuation of a business strengths and weaknesses in relation to the specific industry conditions, and what it takes to crafting a good strategy so that your strategy matches the kind of challenges that the external environment poses to you, the threats that it actually brings for you, and then the challenges it brings for you to face as a company. Uh, Shixian, I don't know if it is a problem. Maybe you can log out and log in again. I think that might help you solve the problem because I don't see anybody else having the same problem. Okay. So those are the learning objectives for today. So chapter 3, right on the top, you see in green, thinking strategically about the firm's external environment. That's precisely what we are going to do today. Chapter 4 will go back to your own company analysis. It's going to focus on internal environment. Then, of course, you have other things, forming your strategy, the vision itself, and then figuring out what options you have, what alternative strategies do you have, and then selecting the best one, implementing it. It doesn't talk about the evaluation. Even once you implement a strategy, you're going to ask yourself what elements of the strategy are working for you, what elements of the strategy might have to be tweaked, might have to be changed, and certain elements of the strategy no longer relevant because things have changed in the external environment. You have certain elements of the strategy that you might want to discard because they're not just happening for you, and there's certain elements of the strategy that you're adding up. So there are proactive elements, reactive elements, and there are elements of the strategy that you just can forget and discard them. And that's a strategy that you think will realize for you as a company whatever that you set for yourself to achieve in terms of vision and goals. Goals could be again as we discussed in the previous chapter, financial goals and also, strategic goals. Goals can be both types, right? So we go back here. The external environment, again, when we say external environment is composed of the external macro variables, macro environment variables, which could be the pestle. I'm sure you studied this in a lot of courses, international business, maybe marketing, maybe principles of management. You must have gone through these things several times over. You're in your, you know, capstone course, you're almost close to graduation. So I presume you know that pestle stands for political, economic, social, technological, and then environmental and the legal factors. So that's what we are going to literally look at in the next slide. That outer circle that you find in gray, grayish blue, is what is the external macro environment. Look at it carefully. I'm sure you're aware of all these forces that affect all companies. The things out there in the outer circle is not necessarily only affecting our company, which is at the center here, but they affect every organization out there, every industry out there. So economic conditions, yeah, the beyond us, what happens in the global economy and what happens in the country's economy, definitely beyond the control of the company, but you have to be aware of it. And then you figure out a strategy how to cope with it and how to work around it. And how do you make sure you're creating the best products available out there? How do you continue to, attract new customers? How do you keep your existing customers happy? How do you outsmart your competitors? These are the questions. The question is how, right? And then we also studied in one of those chapters, when you answer the question how, you're addressing the fact of strategy. You're addressing what kind of action plans get you there. So the economic conditions, it could be aspects like inflation, it could be aspects like, general interest rates out there. It could be several things that can fit in there, money supply that's available, the banks and how they operate in terms of interest rates, all those, real income, the value of your money itself, what's your disposable income, employment, plenty of economic conditions which affect businesses all over the world. Then global forces, I think, you can safely put stuff like the pandemic, for example, and what kind of shifts you have in how supply chains are operating, how it has restricted people movement, it has restricted, material movement. So there could be global forces well beyond us, and then there are social forces. Our own lifestyles have changed, our own, preferences and tastes have changed. Your generation has, consumption patterns which are very different. You have a different way of actually your purchasing patterns are different. So there are plenty of things that have changed in terms of society across the world. Technology is something that's driving businesses, is changing formats, how businesses operate, and technology is opening plenty of opportunities as well. You could establish a company and make it grow really big because of this factor called technology. If you bring out something innovative, there are people who will invest, there are financial institutions ready to invest. It's because technology drives, and then it actually drives you to a scale which you couldn't have achieved, say, 30, 40 years ago. You would have taken a long time to build a corporate, but because technology is a driver, a huge driver right now, anything to do with technology, it could be software, it could be applications, I don't know what, you can use technology advances and innovation that is really disruptive, that is unique, that adds value to customers or clients. If you can bring up that kind of technologies, I mean, you're going to be a winner. Your business is going to succeed in spite of whatever, situations that we have. Political, regulatory, legal factors. I think we all know this really well. What's happening between, say, the US and China has affected everyone. It's just not affected the US and it's just not affected China. It's affected businesses across Europe. It's affected businesses in Brazil, Russia, in India, all across the world. So those after effects are felt everywhere because political framework is important. Legal issues, regulatory framework. Again, these things keep changing. Just look at how legal frameworks can become tougher and tougher because quality controls could be there. Issues like facing stringent controls due to the pandemic could be there. Restrictions on movement of material can be there, and tariffs can be levied, taxes can be changed, import duties can be altered. So there are plenty of things that go on in terms of compliance issues, in terms of environmental issues. So legal and regulatory bodies, they keep changing, they make their laws tougher. You got to be aware and you should know how to deal with that. That's another thing. Then the natural environment. There's no getting away from this, right? You got to make sure that you understand what's going on around you as a natural environment. And if you have to face, see, fires in California, for example, is a natural thing. Beyond the pandemic, California, the West Coast has been hit by fires over the last 4 or 5 years. And I know several industries, including a company that we worked with last semester. It's called Nicholson Ranch. They're a winery, and they depend on visitors. They depend on tourists. They depend on tourists who come to the winery. They taste wine and then they purchase wine. So their sales were never online before because they depended. I mean, tourists always used to come to the West Coast and they love going out. They love tasting their wine and then purchasing wine. They have a website, but it wasn't very active with online sales. And because of the pandemic and also the fires in California, people stopped coming to the winery. They were struggling. And then they had to push big time into digital marketing, online marketing. And they figured out the online marketing is a real good tool to sustain the revenue streams. So obviously the natural environment, including the fires, hurricanes, earthquakes. If there was an earthquake in Japan, a lot of industries would come to a grinding halt because Japan produces a lot of semiconductors, all these integrated circuits that go into manufacturing mobile phones, televisions, and sensors, which go into manufacturing cameras, and the sensors, camera sensors, which go into manufacturing mobile phone cameras as well. So if there is an earthquake in Japan, it kind of has a domino effect. It has a ripple effect on several other industries, and that's because natural environment plays a massive role. Demographics, it's about how many people have access to the internet, how many more people have access to better housing, how many people are actually having access to proper infrastructure, and the way we have lived, like, do we stay in joint families, have we become nuclear families, the size of the families have shrunk and become smaller, and their level of consumption is different because you might have certain families with two kids at home, certain families they're empty nest because their two kids have grown and they've gone somewhere in pursuit of their own careers. So there are a lot of things. There are single parents, plenty of them out there. Their consumption patterns have changed, their needs and requirements have changed. So understanding demographics, their income, their education, their age groups. Suppose you go to countries like India. India has a population of more than 65% who are below the age of 35. Can you imagine, out of the 1.4 billion people this country has, 65% are below the age of 35, which is a good thing, but it can present very unique challenges. The country has to generate enough employment to keep these people employed. Otherwise, unemployment destroys the fabric of social settings in a country. You might have these young people who are capable of doing something very good, indulge in antisocial activities, and crime can go up. So India has its own unique problems. I mean, you have a country which is young population, but where do you give them the education, the skill sets that they require to utilize them in constructive ways in building their own futures as much as contributing to their country? So obviously, demographics has a huge bearing. I mean, when you say 65% of India's population is below the age of 35, it's a very unique opportunity for companies in India because there's a lot of consumption of internet, of technology, kind of equipment and tools and products. And it also has consumption for, say, education. It has consumption for banking and insurance. It has consumption for medical insurance and stuff like that. It has propensity for consumption for housing, for vehicles, and for the automobile industry, for the mobile communication industry, for the television and that kind of entertainment industry. So it has opportunities as much as it has challenges. So demographics, as I said here, the size of the population, the growth rate, the age distribution of a population includes the distribution of the population, the distribution of income, the trends in these factors. Countries like China, countries like Brazil, maybe Indonesia, these populated, highly populated countries, if you start a business there, you might not even have to worry about exporting and taking off your products that you produce, the surplus, to export to another country, because the domestic consumption is so strong, so intense. I know of one of my student in the master's program. She's from Thailand. I used to ask her, "Are you going to stay back in the U.S. after graduation?" And she said, "No. After I graduate, I'm just going to go back to Thailand, open my boutique restaurant." I really like the idea because Thailand is such a touristy place. She knows that there are people who come in from outside of Thailand willing to spend the extra amount of dollars to eat and to stay and to enjoy, premium quality, high quality stuff. And so she said, I'm not just opening any kind of restaurant. I'll open a boutique restaurant. Expensive, one of a kind. It's all for the experience. It's just not for just like a, come and eat food and go away. It's not like one of the fast food places like McDonald's or KFC. It's going to be a boutique restaurant. You'll get the real Thai experience. You'll get something that's very customized, that's unique, that's so special to Thailand, and with a premium price. The way it's served out, the ambience of the place itself, the way it's laid out for you, it's all going to speak about Thai culture and Thai, specialties. And I really like that she did go and start that. I was thinking she's not serious about it. After she graduated and went home, I'm in touch with her on Insta and on Facebook, and she started off her boutique restaurant. It's doing really well in spite of the pandemic, because it's a place where people will come in spite of the pandemic. They have the money, they're willing to take good care of themselves, travel for vacation. They feel claustrophobic staying at home after long months of the pandemic. So her boutique restaurant is doing great. Social forces, I told you about this, the cultural factors, the lifestyles, the impact of business. Strangely, say New York Tech and the School of Management thinking of how do we reach out to youngsters like you to actually advertise our programs, whether it's the bachelor's program or the master's program. And strangely, it's, students tell it has to be via TikTok. I'm like, how are we going to talk about something serious as academics using TikTok? And our generation is not so active. We cannot create TikTok videos easily as you can. So I gave them the idea, the committee that was discussing how to market our programs in an effective way for students. I gave them the idea saying the best possible way that you could possibly do it is hire students who are willing to help the school and ask them to create content, short 20-second, 25-second, or 15-second TikTok videos, each one talking about, say, campus life, about their accomplishments, about several initiatives under the triple platforms of excellence. That's your generation. Your societal values have changed. Your lifestyles have changed. Your preferences have changed. So that's an important macroeconomic variable. Then you talk about the political. I spoke about it. All the regulatory framework, the antitrust laws, tax policies, tariffs and taxes, import duties that you might have, the political climate that you might have, the court systems. They're very unique in each country, so you got to know about it. The natural environment, I talked about hurricanes and fires in California as an example. You might have very unique challenges in different countries and different regions. So how do you deal with those situations? That's an important thing. Technology, you want to talk about, those disruptive technologies that you have all the time. It's key that you're able to do that unless you find out how you can leverage technology. You can't call yourself a company for the future if you're not invested into the use of technology. Either you create it or you utilize and leverage existing technologies to the benefit of your customers or clients, or else you perish. And then you have global forces which are very much beyond you, like political events. It could be the pandemic in this case. So that kind of thing can affect us big time. And then you have the economic factors, interest rates, inflation, trade deficit, savings, per capita income in different countries is different. The market conditions could be different, and consumer confidence in the stock markets and how it operates, whether it's safe. Say for example, the U.S. American markets for stocks is very mature. You have so many regulatory, kind of help that protect investors' wealth. You have very little chance that your money is going to get stolen or somebody is going to be dealing in fraudulent practices. So that's what the general economic conditions can affect you. My wife, she kind of invests using her mobile application in stocks because she knows it's a very mature market. And whatever advice, say Robinhood, she uses Robinhood as an application for doing investments. They really give you sensible advice. So obviously, all these conditions help, say, different companies in different industries to take decisions whether to come to the U.S. because they find U.S. market is a very mature market, and the ancillary support industry is there, the regulatory protection is there, and customers are pretty much aware and they're very educated about the opportunities that are out there. So all these things make an impact whether you want to go to another country, whether you want to continue to stay and or do business in that particular country, you want to expand and reach out to emerging markets or not. All these decisions, all these strategies are determined by your understanding of the macro environmental variables. So, question one, does the industry offer attractive opportunities for growth? Suppose you're starting a new business. You can ask yourself this question: industry. So, the many companies that make up that particular industry. Suppose you say automobile industry. Is it nice for you? Is it an opportunity for you that you too think of making an electric car? Does Apple want to ask itself this question? Should Apple get into making an electric car? And I think they are invested into technologies that help them make an electric car for the future, like Tesla is doing, BMW is doing. There are other Japanese companies like Honda doing it, Nissan doing it. So many Italian automobile car manufacturers which are into electric cars, Chinese companies that are making electric cars. So there's you were asking this question: is there a possibility of the current market growing in terms of units or sales for these electric cars? What is the past, what is the current, and what is the expected, forecast for sales for such cars? If the answer is they have a potential, the market is going to grow, more and more number of people are going to migrate from using, gas-driven cars to electric cars because they care for the environment. It's much more convenient. And today, the batteries in cars give them longer drive without having to recharge very often. So these are the things that will predict and forecast what kind of sales can you expect in the future. If the answer to these questions is a very strong yes, and that means you can actually take a choice of getting into this industry and you can invest in the R&D that it takes to build an electric car. So that's what it is about, defining growth opportunities. Does this industry have growth opportunities? Are there too many players here? Is it already saturated? Will buyers stop buying this product? Will new buyers, not be interested anymore? These are questions you're asking. Different sectors, regions of market grow at different rates. I mean, the number of people who say driving electric cars in India is almost zero. But if you look at, say, the Chinese market, I'm sure it's got bigger potential because there's money out there, plenty of population in China have the money to invest and buy an electric car. Not so much in India. You might have few people who are okay buying a Tesla, but where do you charge your Tesla car? You don't have charging points. You don't have the superchargers in India all over. In Dubai and Abu Dhabi, if you build an electric car that's super expensive, the Tesla truck, for example, there was one of my students from Saudi last semester. He wanted to buy the Tesla truck and ship it all the way to Saudi because they have the money and they have the Tesla charging stations and they have the Tesla services possible. So you want to consider regions and sectors. By the way, Elon Musk has been telling from the last 4 or 5 years that they have intentions and plans to go to India. He's not going. He's not yet going. He's talked about it for the last 5 years. Can you believe? But the decision has not been made whether they will really want to go to India. So they're going everywhere. Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the Middle East has plenty of charging stations. They're aggressive there. The markets are open. There are customers who have the money and are interested in Tesla cars. Not so much with India. Whether it's a lost opportunity or whether it's a smart decision, only time can tell. So that's strategy. Growth varies with industry life cycle. Sometimes when you have a new product, it takes a while. I mean, Tesla did not sell as many cars as they're selling right now, say some 5 years ago or 6 years, 7 years ago. You know, takes time for the emergence. Then there is a growth phase. I think now, right now, for electric cars, that's why Apple is also interested. Many Chinese manufacturers are interested in electric cars, making of electric cars. It's because it's growing. And this growth phase can perhaps last for 10 years, maybe 15 years, I don't know. Or you might hit a place where it becomes mature, it stops growing. And then you might have a better technology, and that's why this current technology will decline. So just like product life cycle stages, introduction, growth, maturity, and decline, like that you have for the industry also, emergence of that particular technology for selling that kind of product, growth stage, which might last for a few years, hopefully. And then it matures, it plateaus, and then it begins to decline unless you know how to continue to innovate, unless you know how to bring out a new technology. And growth doesn't does not guarantee profitability. The reason being, even if you're bringing out a technology, somebody else can do it better. Like say for example, Samsung and Huawei were the first manufacturers to bring in the foldable mobile phone. Apple might eventually bring it up, but they might do a better job if they bring a device which is stronger, more durable, better integrated into the Apple ecosystem. Its functionality is great. It's proved that Apple products come out really polished. They are very complete products. If that happens, Apple will probably take away the maximum profits from the foldable market, whether it's a foldable screen laptop or a foldable screen mobile phone. Apple will take its own time, but when they come out, they want to make sure they have the best product out there because they focus so much on the design components. They don't want to come up with products that have issues, whether it's software or hardware issues, and they have to recall, and you have plenty of problems. They're not the first movers there, but when they come in, they come up with a really polished product, and I think that's a good strategy because they focus so much on design. Once you answer that first question, does the industry offer enough opportunities for growth? You have a second question. What kinds of competitive forces are, this is a very, very important thing. What kinds of competitive forces are industry members facing? And how strong are these forces? That's a key question. And this is the heart of this chapter. There are five competitive forces described by Michael Porter, and this is such an important framework. I mean, it's not the only framework to understand industry forces or competitive forces, but it's a great framework that Michael Porter spoke about in his book. And it's really even relevant even today because you're looking at these five forces with the five bullet points here. First one, competition from rival sellers. So whatever existing competition that you have, that's one of the force. Just can you give me a second? I'll come back. List is the existing competition between rivals. Suppose you're starting a restaurant, let's assume. I think for simplicity's sake, what I can do is take a restaurant business if you want to start a restaurant or even a coffee shop. I had in my last class a student who wanted to start her own coffee shop and a chain of coffee stores. I really like the idea. I think you know why? Because nobody ever stops having coffee, especially if you love your coffee. And the availability of quality coffee is limited to only a few countries and few regions and few type of climatic conditions. So it's limited. Coffee doesn't grow everywhere. And you need to procure this high quality coffee, and high quality coffee determines the high quality coffee that you can make and serve your customers. And people who love their coffee, I mean, the population is increasing. It's not decreasing by any chance, even if the pandemic has hit the world. And people who love their coffee continue to love their coffee. They need their morning coffee and they need the caffeine, especially if you're going through long Zoom meetings. So I really like the idea. But she had to. I asked her, how can you make your coffee store different? Is it just the quality? Is it the type of offering? Is it different flavors of coffee? The type of coffee beans that you procure from different countries? And what kind of experiences would you give? Can people read on an iPad or an Amazon Kindle? Will they have opportunities to, surf the internet unlimited? Can they have other experiences? I don't know. So what else will you serve to make your coffee store distinct from, say, Starbucks or George's Coffee or other coffee stores? How can you make your coffee Gloria Jeans? There are so many coffee stores out there. So how do you make your coffee store very different and differentiated? And I was also telling her in Dubai, I've seen Armani Exchange having their own premium coffee store. It's super expensive. Armani Exchange, they have their own coffee store in Dubai Mall. You can have a look at it. It's so fancy, just for the experience of having coffee. It's about that's just not the coffee itself, the experience that you have. So for the simplicity's sake, instead of just always talking about Apple and say Elon Musk or say Alibaba or Tencent, these big companies, let's say you want to start your own coffee shop. The first thing would be asking yourself, how do you position yourself? Who do you think are you going to be your existing rivals? Who are more established, who are closer to you, and who offer these high quality coffee that you think, whom are you trying to compete? Whether they are any other coffee store that you're competing, or you're competing with one of those branded chain of coffee stores. So how do you think you position yourself? So look at your existing competition, and competition from new potential new entrants. It's when you think you want to start a coffee shop, don't you think others can do the same thing? Perhaps yes. It's not Apple, it's not Alibaba or Tencent, it's not a gaming company that others cannot join in and create a company, a coffee store again just next door opposite on the other side of the street. They can easily do it. So look at the potential of the threat of new entrants. How many new entrants will you have? Is it saturated? Can you put an entry barrier? Can you stop them from coming? Is it possible that your brand image is so great and so strong that others will feel discouraged to open their coffee shop? I don't know. You have to ask yourself this question before you say, let me put my money in creating a coffee store. So, competition from substitutes. Not all of us have coffee. Some of us have tea. Some of us have other beverages. So, what about substitute products? At some point of time, suddenly, if they say coffee is terrible, coffee is bad, doctors find out something, research proves something, and people begin to realize maybe coffee is not the best thing to do. Life actually is much bigger than coffee. So, what kind of substitutes can happen? And what kind of research is going on? What are the existing substitutes in terms of performance, taste, durability, availability? What are the substitutes? Are they close substitutes? Are the substitutes not really close in terms of taste, in terms of the experience, in terms of the caffeine it brings you? So there are other caffeinated drinks. So what are the close substitutes? What do you think gets you as close as having a nice coffee? Supplier bargaining power. Suppose you don't have supplies of the best quality coffee beans. Starbucks takes all the coffee beans from Brazil, from other countries, like I don't know which other countries manufacture high quality coffee. India produces some coffee. I think other countries produce coffee. Very few places in the world produce high quality coffee. So if you don't have suppliers giving you high quality coffee, you're done. So would you want to buy some agricultural land, some coffee plantations so that you keep your supplies? What do you think you should invest in? Just the store, or take care of your suppliers also, some part of your supply? Do you want to control your supply chain or no? You want to depend on somebody, and that somebody is going to charge you a high price for coffee beans, quality coffee beans? You're in trouble. The cost of your coffee is going to go drastically up, and suddenly you'll find yourself not very competitive in terms of price, and you cannot sell as much coffee as you used to before. So, thinking about the supply element, how do I procure the best quality coffee beans from different countries, from different regions? Because each coffee has its own flavor. And then you're talking of customers bargaining power. Why would I come to your store for everyday coffee? Why I want to try different coffees from different types of outlets? So I'm not going to come back to you all the time. How do you entice me to come back to you all the time and not go to, say, Starbucks, or not go to some, say, Gloria Jeans or Caribou, or there's hundreds of brands which have good quality coffee. My wife is a big fan of coffee, so at least I know some brands of coffee. Armani Exchange coffee. It's crazy that number of possibilities that you have, and that gives me bargaining power because there are so many options. So how do you make sure you buy my loyalty, and that you retain my um, kind of loyalty towards your coffee? What kind of unique experiences would you offer? So these are the five forces. I'm not explaining each of those five forces will come in detail, but this is the heart of this chapter. The five forces which are acting in the whole industry. Which industry? It's the coffee industry, the beverages industry. It could be tea, it could be coffee. That's the whole industry. And what are the forces, and how strong are the forces? And does it leave space for you to be operating in the first place? Can it mean some decent profitability? Can you survive this kind of onslaught from these market forces? So is the industry attractive, or is the industry not so attractive? If the competition is intense, potential of new entrants, anybody could start the coffee shop very easily. There are no entry barriers. There's no learning curve involved. It's all too easy for someone else to do the same thing that you're doing. Substitutes are very close to a coffee experience. Suppliers control the market space. You are at the mercy of the suppliers of coffee beans and other ingredients that go into making good quality coffee. Customers have too many choices. They can easily switch from your brand of coffee to another brand of coffee. If everything is stacked up against you, the chances that you'll make decent profits and then you can survive the onslaught of these five forces is very slim. So you've got to be very cautious because it's your money, it's your time, it's your lifetime that you are planning to give to this particular project. And I really like this, girl's idea of having her. She's thinking like an entrepreneur. So I was even volunteering to say, if you eventually want to open your coffee shop, please tell me. I'll be happy to help, even if it's a piece of advice, even if I can look at your market research, if I can help you with some insights, and whatever experiences I have from traveling from different countries, working in different countries, I'll be happy to share. So these are the five forces that we spoke about. Existing competition right at the center, who are the existing competitors that you have. The bargaining power of suppliers who give you the most important supplies, in our case, quality coffee beans. I don't know if you have heard of chicory. So you can have that kind of input. You can have other milk products which can go into making coffee, the cream that is used, the plenty of raw material that goes. These are all coming from suppliers. Who supplies you, say, disposable, whatever, coffee mugs, and how do you make it more efficient? How do you make it more friendly, environment friendly? These are all your suppliers. And of course, you need also supplies of human capital, people who are skilled, who know how to make coffee, how to serve coffee, so and how to make the experience really unique. So these are all your suppliers. Do you have people? Do you have the technologies? Do you have the coffee making machines? Do you have trained people who can manage your accounts and stuff like that? All these are supplies to your industry. Buyers, you don't want to open, a coffee store in a place where coffee is not part of the culture. You want to go to a place where you have enough traffic. The location should be attractive. People should have this habit of having a morning coffee and maybe coming back for an evening coffee. If they have had a great day, two coffees at least. If they have a really good day, maybe three coffees a day. You never know. So you want to make sure you have enough buyers, and then buyers do not switch easily. So make the product very differentiated, make the experience so good, and make it available next door. I don't know. You have all possible ways of thinking about it. And I talked about substitutes, the threat of substitutes. Are there substitutes which are close in terms of performance, availability, durability? Not durability in case of coffee, of course, in terms of taste, in terms of the experience that it gives you. Potential new entrants, how many other people will open a coffee store next door across the street? Yeah, you always have that threat. How many can become another Alibaba that easily? It's not easy. Might take a good 10, 15 years if you want to compete against Alibaba. You want to become a company like Tencent, for example. How many years? You'll take at least 20 years to make at least that become. If you're lucky, you might be smart. Not everybody's lucky, right? So, and but to start a coffee shop, somebody who has money has this fancy idea of having their own coffee store, they can easily come in there. So potential of threat of new entrants is very strong in the case of a coffee shop. Not so much for Tesla, not so much for Apple, not so much for Xiaomi or Huawei, these big companies. Try and reduce the threat by being very innovative, investing in R&D, making their products so good, so technology advanced, so other companies struggle to reach there in a short span at least. So let's look at the five forces, okay? Using the five forces. Step one, step two, and step three. For each of the five forces, you have to look at the parties involved. When you say parties involved, your company, competition, threats, substitutes, buyers, suppliers, all are the parties. So each force, think about all the players involved. Look at the specific factors that bring out competitive pressures. What increases the competition? What factors could decrease the competition? That's how you study each of those forces. Step two, evaluate how strong the pressures stemming from each of the five forces. Are they strong, moderate to normal, weak? If the forces are very strong, not an attractive industry because you're going to struggle. But if it's moderate to normal, you might think you're smart enough, you have a differentiated product, you have the technology, you have the patents to support you, to back you up. And so you might succeed. If the forces are weak, perfect. You have a great opportunity here. Grab the opportunity, make a make as much money and create as much market share, realize the growth potential as much as you can, and then you're sitting on liquid cash. You can innovate, you can diversify into other areas. You don't have to stick only with coffee shops. You could be into all kinds of businesses. I know many companies which start off as, in India we have a company called Wipro. Wipro started off making soaps, all kinds of soap, liquid soaps and shampoos and these kind of stuff. Wipro then went on to make electric bulbs. Now Wipro, if you talk of Wipro in India, Wipro is a software company, which is big time into software, IT, and information technology enabled services. It's an IT company. It's strange. If you go back to history of Wipro, it says it started manufacturing soaps. I can't imagine how I'll buy a Wipro soap now because in my head, Wipro is an IT company. They actually create IT, information technology solutions for clients all across the globe. Wipro and Infosys, these Indian companies have their presence in Long Island. There is Infosys in Long Island. It's an Indian company employing hundreds and thousands of employees in Long Island. Wipro has their offices here. They have offices in Manhattan. I was surprised. I thought only, the Silicon Valley has all these software companies. Strange. Has some Indian IT companies operating out of Long Island and Manhattan. So this is possible. State Street, so there are many companies like that. IT-enabled company services are doing really great. So evaluate how strong these pressures are. Five forces are. They are strong, they're moderate to normal, or weak. Ideally, moderate to normal is okay. Weak, I don't think you find a industry where forces are very weak. Very weak forces could mean that you might not stay in that particular industry. The industry is possibly dying. So I think moderate to normal is kind of okay and is to be expected. Determine whether the strength of the five forces is conducive to earning attractive profits. Is this industry attractive to make above average profits? If the answer to that question is yes, I think you're in a good space. This industry is attractive. You can start your business there. Now, how do you compete against rivals? Assuming that you have enough competition out there, this is a simple thing. Price discounting, a lot of companies do this, price discounting. Every time you have a new product launched, it's priced at a premium, something that you must have learned in marketing called as price skimming policy, strategy, price skimming. And then eventually they discount the price because there's a new model coming out again. Clearance sales, some old models, clearance sales, blowout sales. There's a lot of clearance sales. What I really like about the United States, I came in only in 2018. The clearance sales, the discounts here are real discounts. In India, strangely, if you go to India, you'll say discount, but maybe they have done an increase in price and given you a discount. So it's as good as having no discounts at all. They increase the price by, say, 30%, then give you a 20% discount. You end up paying 10% more. But in the US, when they say discount, it really is discount. So I really appreciate that. All that we took in marketing classes when I was a student, way back when I finished off in 94, my MBA, all that we studied was from American books. And the Indian market is so different from US market. So I'm like, oh, the theory is so different. The theory looks so nice and so good. And in India, nothing seems to be applicable. But when I came to the US and I've seen the US markets, I really appreciate it. Oh, that's the reason why these guys were talking of those great things in the books. I understand it now. So good for you. So that's one of the weapons that you have, to actually see how you can increase your sales and improve your revenue streams and make sure you're making some profits even during tough times in spite of competition. Couponing, advertising items on sale, that's, I think you understand that coupons are a great thing to do. Advertising product or service characteristics using ads to enhance a company's image, recall. ADAS. If you took marketing 102 and other courses in marketing, you understand you have the ADAS, AIDAS, attention, interest, desire, action, and satisfaction. Attention. You do all the marketing effects to, whatever advertisements to draw attention. You got to generate enough interest. It's just not enough if I have a nice jingle on the advertisements and nice, great visuals, but it has to generate true interest. That means I need to pick up the phone and make a call inquiring about the product. That means the advertisement was effective in drawing my attention, getting me to call them or go to the store or visit their online store. interest, then the desire. Even if I have not enough money, am I willing to take a credit card and swipe the credit card? Though it's beyond my buying capacity, the desire is so strong because the product is so great that I'm willing to take it on credit. So I'm ready to swipe my card, really put in money there and buy the product. That's desire. Action. So actually I place an order, or I go to the store and I purchase the product itself. I start using it, and only then the last thing called satisfaction. So do I that's a key, because I have to go and recommend the same product to others, the positive word of mouth publicity. So, what an advertisement should do, it should draw your attention, create the interest, create the desire to go and purchase the product, actually make the purchase, use it, derive that sense of satisfaction. You know that you have value. That's what we discussed in one of the classes. Do we have value? I paid a price for it, and is it really of value to me? If it's of value to me, I feel it's a different product. It made my life easy. It makes my job good. It makes me feel good. Even though I've spent so much money on it, I'll go tell people, come on, guys, if you want to buy a laptop, buy this one. This is great. Innovating to improve product. I mean, all companies continuously innovating. This is a competitive weapon. How do you beat your competition as a company? Innovate. Whether it's making coffee, creating the space. I remember in Jordan, I don't know if you happen to go to Jordan, there is one coffee shop. I'll try and figure out the name. It's been a long time. It's Jordan is beautiful as a country, and Jordan is, I don't know how to describe it. So biblical. I've visited so many biblical sites there in Jordan. They're so nice. You can sense history. You can feel 2,000 years of history. I've gone to places which are of importance in the Bible, and they're beautiful places. So the coffee shop is set in a place. It's on a hill, and you see the countryside and the houses across the hill. It's such a beautiful setting, the medieval setting, 2,000 years old. How would things look like? Pretty much looks like that. And then the place is located in such a vantage position. That visual is great. So you're just not having the best coffee out there, you're getting great visuals out there. And then nice, beautiful books, actual original books, old books that you can pick and read. How nice. In days where we don't have time to read books, they have a beautiful collection of books. And it's very calm and, set in a setting where you feel like reading books because there's no distraction whatsoever. I really love this place. Even the drive to that particular coffee shop, it's got all the stone inlaid with stones. The road is not like our current, whatever roads. That's an ancient medieval kind of road. Even the drive is beautiful there. So I'm just telling you how having coffee can create a mark. This is many years ago. I remember that experience. And I'm like, I'll tell you what is the name of the coffee shop if you happen to go to Jordan. Guys, you should go here. I'm volunteering to tell you that kind of experience because it creates, that's innovation. That's creating something unique, differentiated for the customers. Improved features, style, different models, greater product selection, more variety, more options, more range. Maybe you ask your customers to try out a different flavor of coffee, a new flavor of coffee, maybe Turkish coffee, this coffee, that coffee. I don't know. You can go on and on. Increasing customization of product or service. Maybe you can ship some coffee samples, small free samples of coffee to your customers. You have their address, send them in. Tell them, guys, we miss you. It's been a long time you visited us and had coffee with us. We really, you're very important for us. You can have a free sample of our new flavor coffee. Here are 3, 4, 5 different samples. Your family can have a coffee at home right now, but we want you to come back to us. So a lot of things. Building a bigger, better dealer network. One place, good for you. It might work. But I was telling I don't know, maybe you know the girl's name, Samantha. She's the one who was telling that she's having interest in creating a coffee store. So I told her, you have so much potential. If you start good and if you understand the operations really well, if you control the cost, and if you're creating unique set of values, you will make money. People want that good experience. People want to begin the day on a high, on a good note, on an a positive, optimistic note. And a coffee is a great way to start your day. If that be the case, you should expand. Don't just confine yourself to the United States and different states in the US. Just go across to Middle East. There are so many opportunities for you. You can travel. Your business will be really global. I try to inspire her as much because you want to build a bigger, better, not just dealer network. You want to have a chain of coffees. So you will be the next Starbucks. Who knows? I hope she does. Improving warranties. Of course, you don't have warranties for coffee, but of course, if you're buying some products like Apple or cars or whatever, laptops, anything that you buy, you need warranty, low interest financing. All these companies offer their own, credit cards. I know B&H. I don't know how many of you know B&H in Manhattan. They sell all kinds of electronics. It's a electronic lover's dream. For long, even before I ever came to the US, I know B&H because B&H has such a big store in Manhattan. I mean, and it's huge. They have levels, one level only for laptops, another level for cameras, another level for seconds products, the stuff that you can buy from the secondhand markets. It's huge, and you have tripods, you have whatever you call studio equipment, advanced professional equipment, all kinds of stuff. You can't go there and come back without buying. I love the place. If you gave me a chance, I'll be quarantined there. So the reason why I brought up B&H example is the financing. They have the B&H credit card. They have the Paybu. The Paybu card is like you pay in full, and they'll refund your tax. Suppose you're buying a $5,000 camera equipment for your studio work, for your commercial work. You do wedding shoots, you do portrait work, you do product photography, you do landscape, you might do interior design kind of photography. You're a serious guy. You purchasing say $10,000 worth equipment. That's a huge amount, and you pay a lot of taxes. And B&H Paybu card, if you pay by that card, you get your tax refunded. How nice! It's like 8.9 or 9% taxes in New York. Who doesn't want to save 9% on $10,000? It's a lot of money. So for me, that financing option, even coffee shop. Let's go back to coffee shop. If you buy one coffee, how many points do you get? If you buy 4 coffees, is the 5th coffee free for you? Can you make some points? Can you redeem some of these points that you made in my coffee store at a grocery? Can you redeem it for paying your, say, utility bills, for your telephone bills, or for electricity bills? Suppose you accumulated. You every day have 3 coffees, 4 coffees. After 6 months, can you not pay at least 1 month of your electricity bills with it? How nice. So there are many ways you can think about financing, not necessarily only credit cards, the points that you have, the points that can be redeemed. There are many ways of doing things. So, okay, these are all weapons for beating competition. Okay, so we'll go point by point because this is detailed, okay? Now, competitive pressures because of existing rivalry, existing competition. Buyer demand is growing slowly or declining. The growth for your product, whichever you want to start your company, the demand is not growing like crazy. It's growing slowly, or it's sometimes even declining. Then existing competitors are going to, scramble. They will do everything to grab that demand because the demand is not like unlimited. It's limited. The demand for your product is limited. So the existing competition will try whatever it takes to grab that. So the competition is very intense because the demand is growing slowly or even if it's declining. Second point, it's becoming less costly for buyers to switch brands. If my customers are willing to switch to another brand, I will do everything it takes. High quality, low price, intensely compete to keep my customers. I don't want to let them go because they're willing to switch. I have to keep them. I have to retain them at any cost, even if it means cutting my price to the point I'll make the barest minimum profits. The competition gets very intense. Stop me and ask me, these points look very simple, but you got to apply them. You have to think about it. Industry products are becoming more alike. At some point of time, if you look at Xiaomi and if you look at Huawei, they produce beautiful phones. Some of their phones and features are, in my opinion, they're as good and even better than Apple. If that is the case, the competition becomes intense. Now, Apple is going to cut down on the price. Apple's new set of iPhones are less priced than Samsung counterparts. Samsung's flagships are more expensive than Apple flagship phones. Why? Because mobile phones have become almost the same. They have great cameras, they have great processors, they multitask really well. They have 5G connectivity, internet download speeds. They do very good gaming, and the graphics are amazing. Oh, it's the same thing. So when they become pretty much alike, competition becomes intense. You have competition from big Chinese brands like Xiaomi and Huawei. You have American brands, which is like Apple, and then you have the Korean brands like LG and Samsung, and not so much with Japanese brands like Sony. They don't make that many phones and they don't sell as many phones. The competition becomes intense because phones look pretty much the same. They can do almost just the same things, including performance. So that is the time when competition becomes intense. There is unused production capacity, and products have a high fixed cost or high storage cost. See, when you start your company and you have a lot of production capacity, the key is to use that production capacity. You don't want to have production capacity that's idle. You want to utilize the capacity and manufacture to your utmost and then begin to sell it, to push the product. Imagine if I make 1 million phones and I cannot sell. Storage cost is high, the fixed cost is high. I mean, it's high technology product. If I cannot sell those phones, I'm in losses directly. So when I have such huge production capacities, like, they have all these locations in China, huge production capacities. They can put together that many, phones very quickly. The production is so fast. You look at Samsung, the way they roll out their new phones, every 6 months, every 8 months, they have a new phone coming, new phone series coming. Production capacity, they have to push and push, and that's why the competition is very intense. You don't want to get into manufacturing a mobile company. You don't want to be a mobile manufacturing company because the intensity of competition is already so strong. The number of competitors is increasing. I think it has. In the past, there used to be only Apple and Samsung and maybe Sony and perhaps Motorola and of course, historically Nokia, Finland company. But today, if you look, the whole market space has changed. It's Chinese manufacturers, one American company, and then there of course a couple of South Korean companies. So the landscape has become more competitors. Vivo, OnePlus. There are plenty of other cheaper Chinese brands. OnePlus is doing amazing. Vivo, for example, another Chinese manufacturing, Chinese company manufacturing out of India, they're doing amazing. So there are a lot of companies that have taken up the market space, and the competition is very strong because the number of competitors has grown, and they're becoming more or less equal in size. If you see the market share of these companies that we are talking as we talk, the first position always oscillates between Apple and Samsung. Some of the months Samsung is on the top in terms of market share, and sometimes Apple is on the top in terms of market share. But they're almost like the same. If Google did not have these sanctions on Huawei, I think Huawei would have been in the number one position. They would have overtaken Apple and they would have overtaken Samsung. I have a Huawei phone at home, and it really is a good phone. This is like from more than a year ago. If Google Play and Google App Store and Gmail and everything would work on it, Google Maps would work on it, I would still go and buy a Huawei phone. It's just incredibly good. The Kirin processor is great. Their cameras, they have a co-branding with Leica, which is a German camera manufacturer. That's great. And companies like Xiaomi, for example, I think the latest OnePlus, they have a branding for their cameras with Hasselblad. Hasselblad supposed to be like the Rolls-Royce and it's supposed to be Maserati of the camera industry. Hasselblad cameras are expensive, and they're collaborating with OnePlus, I believe, and creating the camera module for their phones. So they're becoming so strong, they're in terms of performance, in terms of the size, in terms of the production capacity, and that's why competition is very, very intense. The diversity of competitors is increasing. Yeah, so a lot of companies, a lot of options, foldable screens, stretchable screen phones, whatnot, you have it. High exit barriers stop firms from exiting. Can Samsung exit the mobile industry without making losses? They cannot exit. Can Huawei or companies, just because US has sanctions against them, can they exit? No. The exit barriers are so strong. They've invested a lot of R&D. They have invested a lot of resources. They will not exit. They will fight, and they will fight intensely. The competition will only grow. Huawei, for example, is doing so great in Europe. In other parts of the world, they're still doing great because they manufacture low cost, high performance, high quality phones. Now, the threat of new entrants. We're talking of that. Coffee shop, if you open, somebody else can open it next door, can open it another coffee shop across the street. The entrants can be too many. Uh, what is the threat? The threat can be strong or the threat can be weak. Suppose if the strength of barriers to entry are strong, the threat can be weak. Barriers. What are the barriers for new entrants to come? Like what US has done right now. They want to stop Chinese companies from coming to the US. That's a barrier, not created by an American company, but by the government of US. It's an entry barrier. So the threat of new entrants decreases in the US. That threat of new Chinese companies coming to the US and competing with American companies is decreased because of the entry barrier that American government has imposed. I think you're understanding that. So entry barriers. Can you become an Apple? Can you become a Samsung? Can you become a Huawei? Can you start getting there? Are you a real threat? No. The barriers that Apple and Samsung and Huawei and these companies have created are so strong. Tesla is doing exactly that. Tesla has advanced so much in the technology of making hybrid electric cars, and that advancement is so rapid, the entry barriers are strong. If you want to compete, you better compete with Tesla. If you don't have the money and technology to compete with them, you're not going to be able to do good. BMW came up with their electric cars and they're not succeeding that much. Their i3, for example, was a failure. And they have a lot of recall. The i3 was sold at a deep discount. So you're competing against the best in terms of technology. So the barriers that Tesla has created are strong barriers because they have taken advances, invested in R&D. They know how to do it. Their learning curve has been very steep, and you just don't have the experience and the learning that Tesla has. So the entry barrier is strong. Means entry threat has decreased because the entry barrier, strong barrier, reduces the threat of new entrants. Expected reaction. Will Tesla and other companies keep quiet? If you start manufacturing an electric car, they'll push the prices down. This is exactly what happened with Tesla. To begin with, their prices, the car prices of Tesla were very high, and then slowly they went down because the incumbent firm, if you have German companies, you have Chinese companies or Italian companies making electric cars, Tesla went down with their prices. They have a different version, different models of their cars, which are much cheaper. And then you have the premium version and the more expensive models of their electric cars. Smart way of thinking. So incumbent firm, whichever is the company that's leading, which controls the market space, they might have strong reaction because they want to reduce the threat of new companies coming into that particular industry. Attractiveness of a particular market, growth and in demand and profit potential. Why would Tesla invest so much if they had not seen market growth? If they cannot forecast that more and more number of people, these days you find Tesla everywhere. And the reason being because they see the market growth and that's why they've invested that way. And profit potential is huge. There's so little maintenance on a Tesla car. And so why not? And then the customers are happy. Tesla is happy. More cars sold for Tesla, better. And every time you charge on Tesla's, supercharger or chargers, they charge you for charging as well, right? You charge your car, they charge you dollars. Smart thinking. Capabilities and resources of potential entrants. Do we have the capabilities like Tesla has? If we do, why can Apple get there? Because Apple has the money. Apple has this design thinking. Apple has smart people and great leadership. So they can get in and become a threat to Tesla some point of time. Maybe Alibaba can do it. I don't know, Tencent can do it, or other Chinese big firms can do it. But they should have money. They should have deep pockets. They should have access to R&D, and they should have access to all the battery resources that Tesla has. It's all about the battery. If you don't have good batteries that last long, for each charge you can drive X number of miles. If you cannot give that kind of performance, what can you do? And look at Tesla. They've collaborated with other companies like Google, creating very customized maps for them. Smart way. You want to give a full experience, not just the drive, not just the technology that's there, but the Google Maps are so designed for Tesla users. So that they tell you where the superchargers are. They give you lots of information feedback so that you're not found lost in the woods because you're down on battery or something like that. Entry of existing competitors into the market segments in which they have no current presence. All these things are going to either increase your threat or decrease your threat by the way you look at these bullet points and read through the bullet points. Market entry barriers. So what can create barriers for new companies to come in? I know I'm giving you a lot of material, but that's how this whole chapter is. These five forces are very intense. I'm sure you heard of the five forces, but I'm trying to go in detail so that it might help you think about your own future business. What are possible entry barriers? Economies of scale. Suppose I manufacture one laptop or 10 laptops or 100 laptops. The cost of manufacturing just 100 laptops is expensive, it's high. But if I produce 1 million laptops, the cost of manufacturing one laptop becomes very small because I'm operating in large numbers. That's how Apple makes money. That's how Samsung or Xiaomi or Huawei makes money, because they're manufacturing in lots. Economies of scale. Can I match their economy? If I'm a small company beginning to manufacture laptops, my laptop is going to be super expensive. You might have to end up paying $2,000 for just an ordinary looking laptop because I just don't have the scale in terms of production. Big company, a strong company, a publicly listed company that draws from public funding and shareholders, they have the scale. They design the product here, manufacture it out of China. That way, they can reduce the cost, manufacturing huge quantities, again pushing the cost further down. And here you go, high quality laptop for a throwaway price, for a very cheap price. That's where you create value. Distribution and advertising. Even if you have the best product, how do you make your product available? That's the key. Dell, I don't know if you know, historically, Dell was one of the first companies that you could actually customize your laptop on their website. Now you can do it for every laptop manufacturer. But Dell was so good at it. You can decide the RAM, you can decide the storage, you can decide the processor, the speed, you can decide how many cores it should have, you can decide the screen. You can literally customize your own laptop. This was many, many years ago. So Dell was a pioneer in creating that kind of distribution. There was no actual warehouse. There was no actual, storage place for Dell. Everything was online. They were connected to their manufacturers. They were connected to their suppliers. As you placed an order, their, ERP system would actually trigger off all their suppliers and their manufacturers. Your Dell laptop would be assembled and Dell would just ship it back to you. So a very smart way of doing things today. Everybody does it. Lenovo does it. Apple does it. Microsoft, they do it for their own version of laptops. Everybody does it. But Dell was the first company that started off this whole trend. Experience and learning curve. And obviously, if you look at Dell XPS 13, their latest laptop, it's a piece of art. It's really good. Lenovo is doing a great job with their laptops as well because they have the experience. Their ThinkPad and their business machines that they have, their inheritance from IBM before Lenovo took them over. It's amazing, the trackpad system and how robust they are and how heavy duty they are. The learning curve is strong. It works in their favor. So you don't want to compete with Lenovo because you can't match their learning curve. You can't match their experience. Unique cost advantage of industry incumbents. Existing competitors have cost advantage. They have networks established. They have suppliers who are established. They have manufacturing which is established. So how do you compete with them? How does Samantha and her coffee shop compete with, say, Starbucks, for example? Not easy. Starbucks has such an advantage, learning curve, experience, cost advantages. Strong brand preferences. Again, Starbucks, strong brand preference, customer loyalty. Who doesn't know Starbucks? But if you start your coffee shop, how long would it take for you to establish that kind of brand image? Strong network effects. Starbucks, I'm sure, is connected with all other small companies, including, say, DoorDash and Uber Eats and all these kind of companies to supply to their customers. How do you get that network? High capital requirements, especially if it's a technology-driven product like electric cars, consumer products like refrigerators, washing machines, and stuff like the televisions. Capital, you need money. So how do you generate that? And that could be an entry barrier. Building a network of distributors, not always easy. That requires a lot of effort, resources. That can be an entry barrier. Government policies can be an entry barrier. So all these barriers, if they're there, the threat of new entrants goes down. for an existing company. But if the entry barriers are not there, like in the case of a coffee shop, for example, the new entrants can come in easily. So you don't want to get into an industry where new entrants can come in too easily. You want to get into an industry where it's moderately possible that new entrants can come, but not too easily. Because if that is the case, you're going to struggle to survive. Then you come to substitute products. You're looking at substitution. I was telling you about this. Are there substitutes which are readily available? And are they comparable in terms of pricing, quality, performance, the experience, switching costs? Suppose if I have to switch coffee from today, I go to Gloria Jeans, or tomorrow I can go to Caribou Coffee, or the day after tomorrow I can go to Starbucks. There's no cost. I don't really care for that extra $1, $2, $3 that I might have to spend. But for you to migrate from Apple to Android, the switching cost is a lot, not just in terms of X number of dollars, but the whole ecosystem. You're not used. See, for me to switch to Apple is such a difficult task because everything is inverted. Me coming from a Microsoft kind of platform and background completely, into the MS Office operating systems, I just struggle to use Apple because the switching is not about the money. I had a MacBook Pro for like good 2 years and I never used it. I actually gave it off for a throwaway price to my friend because I just didn't enjoy Apple's ecosystem. The switching cost is too much for me, not in terms of dollars, but in terms of how much effort it takes to get used to that new system. So substitutes, for me, they are not close substitutes, but for you, it might be close substitutes. You never know. So switching costs, if they are high, substitutes cannot be compared. If the switching cost is low, I can easily switch, then the substitutes are very close. They're comparable. And the price, quality, performance, those are important things. Availability, which make close substitutes. If they're not available, they're not close substitutes. If the pricing is very different, they are not close substitutes. If the performance is very different, they are not substitutes. If they're very close, if they're comparable, then you call them substitutes. You don't want threat of new substitutes, okay? So indicators of substitutes, competitive strength, increasing rate of growth in sales of substitutes. Are other people migrating from Apple and using substitutes? Maybe Apple has to study. Substitute producers adding output capacity. Other substitutes are increasing their production, increasing their innovation. Is that happening? The threat of substitutes is increasing. Increasing profitability of substitute producers. If Samsung is making more money, Lenovo is making more money, Dell is increasing their market share, Apple should be concerned. Apple should come out with touchscreen laptops. Why doesn't Apple have touchscreen laptops? It just baffles me. Why only their iPad? And why doesn't iPad have their operating system, which is there on their laptops? Why does iPad have its own unique operating system? Why can't an iPad be used also like a laptop? I mean, I have these questions. I don't know if you have the answers for them. Do you have answers for it? And I'm talking nonstop. So if you want to talk, please feel free to talk. We don't want to make this one way. It's a long class. It's going to be a long, long class today. So I'll encourage you to talk as much as you want to. Okay. Supplier bargaining power. This is another one of the five forces, How many suppliers do you have to depend on? And what is their bargaining power? When I say supplier, they're supplying you raw material, they're supplying you components, they're supplying you technology, or they're supplying, in this case, coffee beans, for example. So are these suppliers' products readily available? If it is readily available everywhere, suppliers' bargaining power is low. Criticality of supplier products as industry input. Suppose we have mobile manufacturing companies. They need processors. Qualcomm actually manufactures processors. So that's a very critical component. Qualcomm or Snapdragon processors, very good processors for mobile industry. So if you're a mobile manufacturing company, you want to start thinking about manufacturing mobiles, one of the critical components is the processor. Another critical component is the screen. LG manufactures screens. Sharp, a Japanese company, manufactures screens. Samsung makes screens for Apple phones. For a couple of years, Apple was producing and Samsung was actually producing and supplying screens for Apple phones. I don't know if you know this. So it's important that you have access to the right suppliers' products. And if they're critical, you better make sure that you have enough supply. Otherwise, your production will halt. You cannot produce at the maximum capacity. Number of suppliers of this standard commodity. You know what Apple did now? They're not buying from Samsung their screens, they're buying from LG their screens. They want to increase the number of suppliers so that Samsung does not have an undue advantage of supplying high quality screens to Apple. Buyer's cost for switching among suppliers. So if Apple is actually buying screens from Samsung, does it cost them too much to go and buy from LG? I don't think they have a problem. They just simply switched because it's Apple. They have the money. That means they don't want to be at the mercy of the supplier. They don't want to be at the mercy of Samsung. They will switch. But I'll tell you an interesting story. Samsung even purchased shares and in Sharp, which is a Japanese firm, because Sharp actually manufactures screens. They took a share in Sharp ownership so that they can control the supply of screens for Samsung. Smart moves. Okay. Availability of substitutes for suppliers' products. Do we have substitutes for those supplies? Huawei, for example, does not depend on Qualcomm's processor. They don't depend on Snapdragon processors. They manufacture their own processor called the Kirin processor. It's a substitute. They manufacture their own processor, Huawei. Great substitute. And Huawei phones are okay. They do very well. They're not as good as Snapdragon, but they're okay. Fraction of supplier sales due to industry demand. So, you know how much of the industry demand is there for this particular supplier sales? If it's just a small fraction, that doesn't really hurt you. I mean, this supplier is not going to be having bargaining power. But if the supplier controls the majority of the industry demand for that particular component, then the supplier has an advantage, has a better bargaining power. Somebody had a question? Guys, I can ask you a lot of questions in this particular chapter, so be very attentive. Ratio of suppliers related to industry buyers. Suppose you have a small number of suppliers versus large number of buyers. The suppliers have a better bargaining power. They have more control. It's a supplier controlled market space. But if their number of suppliers are more relative to the industry buyers, the suppliers don't have as much bargaining power. So you have to think about the suppliers. How many suppliers do you have for coffee beans? Good quality coffee beans. Do you have enough suppliers? If you're depending only on one supplier, the supplier can charge you a high premium. Your cost of manufacturing coffee will go up because you're dependent only on one supplier for quality coffee beans. But if you have several suppliers across the globe, you're in a good place because they give you all high quality coffee beans. Your suppliers are many. Backward integration into suppliers industry. Sometimes companies like, say, for example, Samsung, they manufacture their own processor called Exynos processor. Huawei manufacturing their own processor called Kirin processor. These are backward. They're manufacturing their own components. Smart way of doing it because they don't want to depend on suppliers. They don't want to be at the mercy or on supplier bargaining power. They don't want to do that. So that's the force which we are talking of, suppliers, availability of high quality supplies. How critical is the supplier's components? How many suppliers do you have? Can you do backward integration, make some of your own components? These are the factors that you have to think about figuring out the pressure that can be created because of the supplier's bargaining power. Now you have another force in the five forces called the buyer's bargaining power. Now, buyers also have their own bargaining power. Suppose buyers' cost for switching to competing sellers is very low. They can easily switch from one coffee brand to another coffee brand. The switching cost is not much. So buyers have more bargaining power. Even if you charge $1 extra, they'll say, why? Why are you charging $1 extra? I have Starbucks, which gives the same coffee for $1 less. I'm going to go there. They have an option because the switching cost is very low. They don't lose anything. So that's a key. Buyers can have their own bargaining power. That bargaining power depends on switching costs, degree to which industry products are commoditized. Once a product becomes a commodity, then buyers start having bargaining power. Rolls-Royce is not a commodity. It's a unique product. It's a very customized product. It's handcrafted. So it's not a commodity. Toyota, it's a commodity. They manufacture hundreds and thousands of cars. It's like a commodity, and that's why it's much cheaper. Buyers have bargaining power because the car has become a commodity. 30, 40, 50 years ago, car was a luxury. But today it's like a commodity. Who doesn't have a car these days? It's like a commodity. So, the best products can become commodities. 20 years ago, when we saw the first Nokia phone, they were like bricks. They were luxuries because even incoming calls were charged. But today, mobile phones, who doesn't have mobile? They have two, three mobile phones. It's a commodity. So when products become commodities, buyers bargain for better deals, lower price. You got me? Number and size of buyers relative to sellers. Suppose you have a lot of sellers and a very few number of buyers. A lot of sellers trying to sell their same product to few buyers. Buyers have more bargaining power because sellers are more. Strength of buyer demand for sellers' products. You're looking at buyer demand. There's no buyer demand. We don't want your products. We are customers. We are not looking for your product. We're not interested. So, as sellers, what you have to do, reduce the price. We have more bargaining power. If you don't give me the price that is attractive to me, I'll go to somewhere else. I'm just going to postpone my decision of purchasing. I don't want to buy the product right now. I'll postpone it. Give me a good deal. I'm a buyer. I don't know how I understand bargaining better than most people do because in India, I'll tell you the experience. Suppose you go to a shop and they say 100 rupees. How much do you think you should bargain for? If they said 100 rupees in India in a store outside, not a branded store, just a casual store, how much do you think you will bargain it for? Do you bargain in stores? Do you bargain? Guys, I'm asking a question. Do you bargain in stores?
In
Mostly not.
stores where it's like a supermarket, it's like not possible to bargain. But I personally kind of get embarrassed to bargain, so I don't do it that often.
Look at you, Jessica. You got to go to India. They'll rip you off your. So if in India, I'm like you. I can't bargain. Even if I did, I'll bargain like a 10%. Even if I know I could bargain for more, even that makes me feel embarrassed. So I'm pretty much like you. But my wife, for example, she would go to the store, and if the guy says 100 rupees, you know what she would bargain it for? 20 rupees. She bargains for an 80% discount.
Does she get it?
Gets it.
She does?
And that makes me feel like an utter fool. An absolute.
Oh my gosh.
I would have paid 90 rupees easily, happily, and walked off with a smile. She just comes out of the same shop paying 20 rupees for the same product. That's bargaining power. Just in case you don't understand what's bargaining. Okay? And I've seen many, many people even bargain in big branded stores. Can you believe that? They get an extra 5%, they get an extra 2%. I'll never do that because this is branded. Those people who are working there are salespeople. They don't have control. They are not the owners. They cannot give you extra discounts. But I've seen people do that. Oh, you have 10% listed discount. Can you give me another 2%, 3%? They get it. And then suddenly you start realizing, what the hell? How many times I've come to the same store, never bargained, just walked away buying whatever price they told me? How many times would I have lost money? So I think I tried to explain to you the concept of what you understand by bargaining. You are losing money if you don't bargain, and that depends. Not everybody has bargaining power. Jessica, you and me don't have it for sure. We know this from today, but many people do have. So it depends on bargaining power. In the marketplace, bargaining power is a huge thing, whether you're a supplier or whether you're a buyer. Buyer's discretion in delaying purchase, I'll delay it for Thanksgiving. Why should I buy it now? I don't want to buy. I'll get a deeper discount in Thanksgiving. Is that not the case? It is the case. Buyer price sensitivity due to low profit, size of the purchase, and consequences of the purchase. I'm making very less profit, so I don't want to buy bulk stuff from you right now. have to buy big quantities, and right now I don't have the money. Even if I buy it from you, I'll not be able to sell it. So I'll postpone it. Or you give me a better deal, then I'll buy this huge bulk purchase from you. I'm ready to buy 100,000 pieces of whatever, shoes or glasses or whatever from you. If you're a Chinese manufacturing company, what will you give me? If I buy 10,000, what's the discount? If I buy 20,000, what's the discount? If I buy 100,000, what's the discount? Jessica, we need to learn how to bargain, okay?
That's
Otherwise,
an important skill.
absolutely. Otherwise, you end up being a teacher like me. But you want to be a business person, bargaining, especially if you're doing business. Imagine you're doing a business and you go to someone
Professor,
like a deal. You have to bargain. They're ready to offer you 20% discount. Why not 35? Why not 45? My wife would be ridiculous. She'd go 80% discount. So,
Prof-
yeah,
Professor,
yeah.
I have a question. Could you? I don't understand the meaning of backward integration.
So we've finished our bargaining power of buyers. So we can continue. We'll finish only the five forces. We'll take a break after that. Now, this is the question that you want to ask yourself. Is the collective strength of all the five forces? What are the five forces we talked about? Existing competition, bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of customers, threat of substitutes, and threat of new entrants. These are the five forces. Existing competition, bargaining power of suppliers, bargaining power of buyers, threat of substitutes, threat of new entrants. These are the five forces. Is the state of competition in the industry stronger or is just normal? You have to ask this question. The five forces put together. Each industry has the five forces. If it's automobile industry, five forces are there. If it's coffee industry, five forces are there. Mobile communications industry, five forces are there. Laptop industry, five forces are there. Can the industry firms expect to earn decent profits given the forces, the five forces, the pressure? Can we earn a decent profit? Are some of the competitive forces sufficiently powerful to undermine industry profitability? If there is too much of competition, if there's too much of bargaining power of suppliers, if there is too much of a threat for new entrants, huge threat of substitutes, how can we make profits? How can we make enough sales? So you have to ask these questions at the end of the five forces analysis. Ask this question. Matching strategy. Then look at pursue avenues that shield the firm from as many competitive pressures. When you have a strategy, try and overcome these competitive pressures, whether it's pressure from existing competition, pressure from buyers, bargaining power, pressures from suppliers, bargaining power, pressures from substitute products, pressure from new entrants, the threat of new entrants. You have to shield your own company against these pressures, initiating actions calculated to shift competitive forces in favor of yourself by altering underlying factors driving the five forces. Your strategy has to be smart. Otherwise, you'll be out of business. The forces are so strong. Spotting attractive arenas for expansion. Maybe some markets are not explored. Some, emerging places, some countries, not many competitors are there, but the suppliers are good. Bargaining power of buyers is less because they don't have so many options. Those are areas where you want to go. The competitive pressures in these industries are somewhat weaker. So you want to go there and expand, at least that industry or that particular market or that particular product line. Question 3, strategic analysis of industry dynamics. Look at what drives an industry. The industry dynamic, what are the drivers of change itself? Assessing whether drivers of change are individually, collectively acting to make the industry attractive or less attractive. What drives that particular industry? Is it technology that drives the industry? Innovation that drives the industry? Is it growing demand, which drives the industry? Is it, consumer loyalty, reputation, goodwill, network, which drives the industry? What is driving that particular industry? And does, all these forces, the drivers of that industry, do they make this particular industry attractive or less attractive? Determine what strategy changes are needed to prepare for the impacts of these changes that are happening in the industry. It could be innovation, technology, developments, all kinds of stuff. Here are the drivers. Here you go. Growth rate is a driver. It's a very important driver. You're looking at how the industry is growing. Is it continuously growing or is the growth slowing down? Increasing globalization, that means, other foreign companies can come in. Is that true in this industry? You're asking this question. changes in who buys the product and how they use it. Is it changing? What kind of technology change is happening in that particular industry where you want to start your business? What is happening with internet capabilities, online sales? Is it affecting that particular industry? Winery. I was talking of Nicholson Ranch Winery. Imagine, how do you actually buy wine without tasting wine? When people are not coming to the winery, the sales are going down. How do you get people to still buy the wine? You have to think of very, very innovative ways. Internet, online sales. Maybe you buy other wineries. This particular company, Nicholson Ranch, is buying out another winery. So they have different brands of wines, very exquisite wines. So they want to expand their presence, expand their product range, expand their options on online sales. And of course, the existing customers are the biggest customers because they have already tasted the good wine that Nicholson Ranch makes. Product and marketing innovation. You have to find different formats of marketing. Otherwise, you will not survive. Entry or exit of major firms. When a major firm exits, it creates opportunities. When a major company enters this market, it creates more pressure. So you have to figure out what is the driver for this particular industry. Diffusion. When there is a new technology that emerges, how much of that technology passes on to us very quickly? Say artificial intelligence, is it available for all? 3D technology, is it available for all? Bitcoin, fintech, how does it affect everybody? How does it affect transactions? Improvements in efficiency in adjacent markets. Are the adjacent markets, supplier, ancillary units, are they strong? Suppose you want to be a finance company. How is the stock markets? How is the regulation in the stock markets? How is the banking industry? How is the insurance company? Then being a finance company makes sense because other adjacent markets are strong. Reduction in uncertainty and business risk. That's a driver. That could be a driver in certain industries. Regulatory influences they drive changes in the industry. Government policy can change, that can drive or bring down the industry. Societal concerns, attitude, lifestyles, these could be, there are some listed drivers of industry change. Overall, are the factors driving change causing demand to increase or decrease? If they're driving and increasing the demand, this is an attractive industry. If these drivers are bringing down the demand for that particular product, that industry is not attractive. Is the collective impact of the drivers of those change making competition stronger or less intense? And will the combined impacts of these drivers of change lead to higher or lower industry profits? Again, at the end of the day, it's money, right? You want to make profits. After having worked so hard, you want to end up with money. Question 4, how are industry rivals positioned? Now, this is an important question. Once you figured out this industry is attractive, you want to ask yourself, what are the existing firms that are your competitors and how are they positioned? What positions do they have? This is what we call as strategic group mapping. I might ask you this question in the midterm exam. How do you create strategic group maps? It's a simple thing. So there are steps here. A strategic group map is a cluster of industry competitors or rivals that have similar competitive approaches, have comparable products and product lines, sell in the same price or quality range. They all can be grouped together. They emphasize the same distribution channels. These are points that not necessarily all the bullet points have to be true. Use the same product attributes for buyers, depend on identical technology or offer similar kind of services. Now, we're comparing apples to apples. That's the key. If suppose we are a company that manufactures laptops, and if you say right now I'm using an Asus ZenBook. If I want to compare Asus ZenBook, who is my closest competitors? Is it Lenovo? Is it Dell? Is it Apple? Is it Microsoft Surface? What is my closest competitor as Asus, laptop manufacturing company? I'm currently using the Asus ZenBook. So, the Asus might want to look at price, quality, technology, whatever, durability, processing speed, screen, whatever, resolution. All these are product attributes, technology, services, price, product line breadth, how many models does ASUS have? So we can create a map and see who are our competition in each of those categories. In the low end, who are our competition? In the mid range, what are the competitors? In the higher end, which are my competitors? Whom am I competing with? As if my company is ASUS, I have to figure that out. This is the whole idea of creating a strategic group map. So how do you construct a strategy group map? Identify characteristics that you want to compare. Like the previous slide, we talked about price, product attributes, distribution networks, availability, performance, services, technologies. These could be all attributes. Have two variables. You can compare yourself with other competitors based on any two variables, one on the x-axis, one on the y-axis. And then you start locating yourself and you locate your competitors. And the size of the circle that you draw for your company versus other companies is the size of, say, for example, the market share or sales revenue. It could mean anything. So here you can take what you can take on the x-axis and y-axis. You could take price, high, medium, low. You could take geographical coverage. Are you a local company, regional company, national company, or a global company? Product line, do you have very narrow product line, very few products in the category? Or are you wide? You produce laptops, tablets, other hybrid devices and stuff like that. Degree of services offered, no frills, limited service, full service. Distribution channels, do you go straight online sales or retail sales of wholesale sales? Or multiple distribution network channels. Degrees of vertical integration, none, partial, full. How much of backward? Do you produce all your components? That's backward integration. Do you do your own distribution? That's forward integration. Backward and forward integration together is called as vertical integration. Sometimes you don't do any backward and forward. You just manufacture the laptop. You buy components, you put the laptop together, somebody else will sell it on your behalf. That's none. Partial is you might do some of the components, but somebody else sells it for you. Full means you do all the components yourself, you manufacture the product yourself, you also sell it yourself. That's full vertical because it's backward as well as forward. Degree of diversification into other industries. Does ASUS, have any other, diversified industry? Are they into routers? Do they manufacture, other things? Or are they only focused on computing devices, laptops and tablets and stuff like that? None, some considerable. Samsung is into laptops, tablets, Chromebooks. They're into mobiles, they're into hospitals, they're into construction. Considerable diversification. So you can take x-axis, y-axis. These are not everything, some of the examples. Here you go with an example. See, if you look at the x-axis, geographic coverage, few locations versus some locations and many locations. Price and quality, low price, low quality, moderate price, moderate quality, high price, high quality. So they've taken price quality on the y-axis. They have taken locations, geographic coverage from few locations to many locations. This is a 3x3 kind of matrix or diagram that they have. You can take 6x6, 9x9. It depends what you want to do. And if you look at many locations, Walmart, Kmart, they're low price, low quality, but many locations. The size is the market share. It's big, it's huge. Target is somewhere here. They're a little bit towards moderate quality, moderate price, not fully there. And their size of the market share is here. They're not available in as many locations as Walmart, but they're definitely available in a lot of places. Sears is smaller market share. I think they closed many stores for themselves. They're struggling, might have shrunk in market size, mid-range quality, mid-range price. Not as many locations as Walmart, but maybe even fewer. It must have moved this way. Lesser number of locations. Size of this circle or ellipse must have decreased. It must have shrunk in market size. Likewise, Macy's, maybe Macy's and all these three brands put together, their market share must have shrunk, and they might be even further towards the left because their number of locations has decreased or diminished because of the pandemic. TJ Maxx is here, Polo, Ralph Lauren is here, Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus is here. So you can, this is what they have done for selected retail chains. But if you're a coffee shop, then where does Starbucks come? Where does Gloria Jeans come? Where does Armani Exchange come? Where does your own company come? How small or how big it is in terms of market share? This is what you're doing based on real-time data. It's not like you just like the position, you put yourself there, but it's from real-time data and looking at actual numbers of price and quality and locations. And then you're asking yourself, if I'm here, suppose I'm here, who are my competition right here? How do I expand my market share? How do I do better than Gap and Banana Republic or Kohl's or Sears? And how do I move, say, from here to here? Because there's nobody here. Apparently high price, high quality, many locations. Nobody seems to be here. Is it possible to get there some point of time, maybe 5 years time? Or do I have to expand only here and stay here for a long period of time? Or do I want to get closer to Walmart and compete there? Do I have different branding here? Do I have a different branding here? Do I have a completely different branding here? You can do many things. Toyota, for example, it could be low price, mid-range quality, available everywhere. It could be coming here for perhaps Toyota. Then if you put Toyota's Lexus, it's perhaps, high quality, high, price, medium number of available locations. I'm just thinking loudly. So you can have the same company having different brands in different quadrants of this particular matrix. So this is an example of a strategic group map for a selected number of retail chains. You could do it for your industry, but you need real-time data. You need your market research, or else you cannot plot this graph. So if I ask you the question in exam, can you pick up an industry that you're familiar with, automobile industry or mobile manufacturing industry, whatever industry you want to take, and then plot a graph? You can draw, fictitious circles, and you might want to explain why you put a circle. What do you think about it? Yeah, just be ready for something like that as a question in the midterm exam. Question 5. So you need competitive intelligence, you need information about your rivals and what to expect in terms of strategic moves from them. Rivals under pressure want to improve their financial performance. Rivals seeking to increase market standing. What would they do? Public statements from rivals when they're making announcements. You try to figure out their intentions. What is there going on in their minds? Profiles developed by competitive intelligence units. You might have in your own company smart set of people who are looking at all the data that's emerging, the announcements that they're making, annual reports that are being published, and you want to get signals. How are these particular competitors going? What is their direction? And how do we make sure we want to stay ahead of them? These are intelligent ways of looking at how your company is actually going to face competition. Now, useful questions to help predict the likely actions of important rivals. Which competitor strategies are achieving good results? Like these are benchmarking practices. These are good practices, best practices in the industry. Look at what's working for them. Not necessarily you have to do the same thing, but these are good learning points for you. You might want to take notice of that. Which competitors are losing in the marketplace, are doing badly, and what is causing that kind of problem for these companies? You want to learn from others' mistakes. What's hurting their sales? What is hurting their market share? Which rivals are likely making major moves to enter new geographic markets, and why are they going to new markets? Why are they getting into new regions? What's their strategy for that particular region? You want to study that as well. Which rivals can expand product offerings to enter new product segments where they do not have a presence already? Are they increasing their product line? Are they increasing their product offerings and categories where they do not have a presence? They're expanding perhaps. Suppose Apple gets into gaming industry, for example. Sony will be having a tough time. It can get into gaming. Apple is capable. Which rivals can be acquired? That's what I showed you as an example for Google. How many companies they keep on acquiring every year after year. Which rivals are financially able and looking to make an acquisition. And companies like Google are always looking for acquiring smart companies across the globe. Small little companies, they can scale them up at some point of time. Question 6, what are the key success factors for future competitive success? Now, that's important. You have to determine what will give you success. At the end of all this analysis, industry forces, drivers of change, getting competitive intelligence information from other rivals. After you've done all that, you have to determine what basically can get you success as a company. What are the key success factors for you as a company? So you're looking at strategy elements, product and service attributes, your operational efficiencies and approaches, how you can utilize your resources properly. What are the competitive capabilities, core competences that you need to develop as a company so that you can succeed against any firm in that particular industry? And these key success factors are different. For a coffee shop, the key success factors are different. For a technology-driven company like Tesla, the key success factors are different. And you're looking at, as I said, drivers of change, the conditions of competition that's changing, the pressures that are coming from the 5 forces that's changing. So this is again a repetition, a recap of the previous slide. So what product attributes, service features buyers strongly will, prefer buying your product and then continue to come back to you? What resources, abilities that you should be having? How do you combine these resources to create unique capabilities that you're really good at? What shortcomings will put a firm at a significant competitive disadvantage? Is there something that you must be aware internally that can, cause disadvantage if you do not take good care of it? So those are the things that you should be aware. Your own weaknesses, you should be aware. 7, consider profitability, the industry's overall growth potential, the forces, effects of prevailing drivers of change, and you're looking at market position of rivals using the strategic group map, the group map which we just discussed. And then you're asking yourself, how do we make sure we continue to make our profits? And those profits must be attractive for our shareholders because we have an obligation to maximize their wealth. So that's a key. And we're done with the chapter. So you can actually ask me questions if you have any.